nearby?
Hey, it's me. Everywhere's nearby. I'm already here. I'll check it out.
Radiation levels are off the charts.
Radiation levels are off the charts. We need to get out of this.
And Deku doesn't want to alarm anyone.
If you came here expecting a lot of talk about Easter eggs, there are only a few I'm gonna be talking about. But if you came to discuss this extremely emotional episode of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., then you've come to the right place, because it is extremely emotional. I just don't remember ever signing up to or thinking of the fact that out of all the characters on this series that we've been watching this season, Enoch would be the one to make me sob all that much while watching an episode. But that also means it's time for me to go. Hello and welcome back everyone to another one of my Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. videos and my review of the 9th episode of the 7th and final season, something that is heavily stressed on this episode, an episode that was otherwise titled As I Have Always Been. But okay, Groundhog Day, Edge of Tomorrow, Source Code, About Time, If Only, many among other movies that I've watched in the past, but these are the ones that I remember off the top of my head that this episode is paying homage to, you know, all those time loop movies. But that is all though out of the realm of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I always keep the best for last. Doctor Strange is the one that I want to talk about here when it comes to the realm of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, it wasn't necessarily a movie about time loops, it wasn't about that actually, but we couldn't ignore the fact that there was a time loop in there. Not the first time we've had a time loop in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There was the one that Stephen Strange created in order to trap Dormammu within it and subsequently prevent him from consuming Earth. Now, this is not me saying that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. copied that because there was this entirely different flavor when it came to this episode. This is me just saying that there's a little bit in there paying homage to that out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think that's the only reference within the Marvel Cinematic Universe that you could think about on this episode. But another thing worth mentioning over here is this episode did mark Liz Henstridge's, you know, the one that portrays the character of Jemma Simmons, directorial debut. Very good job done here, great job actually, and to add over here, this episode happens to be actually one of the best episodes that I've ever watched on the series. It had a lot of emotional moments, and it did present us with the heart and soul of three people, Enoch, Coulson, and Daisy, with all three of them being the stars of this episode, Enoch being at the top of that list. Now, we've got the Season 5 title cards from the Future arc. We did see those before on this season. I think it was episode 6. I'm sure actually it was episode 6. But it does come back on this episode with a little bit of a twist. It literally repeats within the time loop. Like this second time we watch the time loop start, we do get that card again. It's kind of funny, it's kind of interesting, even though it does not really repeat in future iterations of the time loop. But yeah, that would have been boring really. The first time around though, was pretty cool. Now, one thing I want to say over here is I wish they never really told us through last week's trailer that this episode was going to be about a time loop, because that would have actually made the moment that Mac's face gets all burnt up at the beginning of the episode more effective. Like, it would have been a scary moment. Oh shit, we're losing Mac. But we jump though to the second loop. We think it's the second. Daisy thinks it is the second loop, but it's not really the second loop. The thing is, every time she dies, she forgets all about the previous loops. And the thing about it, she's not freaking out because this is a woman who's lived in the 21st century. She's seen a lot of crazy stuff since she joined S.H.I.E.L.D. She's a pop culture girl as well. She's watched all those movies, she's seen them, she's lived in the 21st century, and she knows what Groundhog Day is. So she could figure it out right away, and you don't really get surprised once you've gone through all of that over the course of so many seasons that we've watched so far. All of that shit has built you this immunity against being surprised by anything. But okay though, Daisy at some point activates Coulson, she starts talking to him, and she gets to realize that this is not really one of the first few times that she looped. She's been looping for at least 87 times so far, because that's what Coulson says, you know, 87 times that I know of. And then there are the 14 iterations of the time loop in which she died. So yeah, it's a fun twist to figure out when all you thought at that point was this was her third time so far. But before I continue though, a lot of people have been referring to all these episodes that are character-centric, actually duo-centric, because each one of them did focus on two characters as filler episodes. You know, they're not really advancing the stories. I think they are advancing the stories, because the main story over here is the story of all of these characters. And all of these episodes so far are taking one last shot at developing all these characters for one last time, and also saying goodbye to the audience. So we've got Mac and Deke. That was not really a filler, that was about the character development of those two. The same applies to the episode with May and Yo-Yo, that being last week's episode. And finally, it applies to this week's episode as well, with Daisy and Coulson, and then throwing Enoch in the mix, with Enoch, like I mentioned, being the star of the episode. But the mysteries, though, of this episode do grow exponentially when things take too many fast turns. First, with the realization they're getting closer to the vortex each time the loop restarts. Then, with the realization Simmons has been blocking memories. And finally, there is the biggest realization: Enoch is programmed by Jemma to stop them if they try to take Diana out, even if he had to kill them, even if he had to kill Simmons herself. But like I mentioned though, Daisy was one of the big stars on this episode. Loved the scene where she's pretty much trying to prove to them that she's seen this before. You know, she's dubbing Yo-Yo, followed by, "See, I know the future, let's talk." And then finally, in my favorite, the random, non-existent word, phlebotinum. I'm personally gonna give this word meaning and then find a way to use this word in all my sentences going forward.
Do you have any proof this loop thing is actually happening?
Think of a fake word and just say it out loud. Anything.
Phlebotinum.
But we're getting closer to seeing Fitz, not in this episode, maybe not in next week's episode, but it is coming closer, at least in some kind of a flashback with Fitz and Simmons. Now there are two hints over here. The first one is not as major as the second, but it is major when combined with the second. I mean, we've been getting Fitz name drops since the beginning of the season, but this episode we got a name drop. But then you combine it with Jemma remembering something bigger, you know, something she should not have remembered, something worrisome, something scary, something she keeps apologizing for, something that she's done and regrets, like what have I done? Something that's gonna lead into the flashback episode that I'm expecting with Fitz and Jemma whenever we get that, and I'm hoping that's gonna be episode 11. But let us though talk about Coulson and Daisy, because I did love how increasingly frustrated Coulson is, especially when he watches Daisy die. That goes to talk about the relationship that we've been seeing for so many seasons. You know, the father-daughter relationship that these two have. Honestly, and for a moment there, I did think that Coulson was the one programmed to stop any attempt to remove Diana. I did think he did it unwillingly, I did think that he didn't know he was doing it, but for some reason, being the only other person who remembers, being the last man standing every single time, and Enoch not going through the same, I started thinking maybe Coulson is programmed to do so, and maybe he just doesn't know it. Of course, instead that was the case with Enoch. We did realize that later on. I did start thinking, you know, maybe if it were Coulson, it would have been better. Like he's basically doing this and then suffering as a result. But then I went back to preferring it being Enoch the way they did it, with the way the episode played out at the very end, for none other than him. We do as well get an emotional moment for Coulson, you know, hating being this guy, the Chronicom, the guy in this body. I guess it's foreshadowing the end of the line for Coulson by the end of the season, like they're gonna deactivate him, decommission him, a very real rest in peace for one last time at the very end of the series, something to match up with the season 5 ending. The episode as well is not just about the emotions of Coulson, as I mentioned before, it's about the duo, you know, Daisy and Coulson. So it is about that bonding that they've been having for so many seasons, coming to one last stop. You know, one last time that they show how much they care about one another, like extremely care about one another, one last time where they share their feelings about one another. Him to her being not just a friend, even though that's the word she uses, but rather the father figure, the father that she's never really had. You know, metaphorically of course, but in his case, she is literally the daughter that he's never had.
I was max headroom for a year, and you know what? Being trapped in a time loop, watching my friends die, helpless to stop it, it's not some time-space anomaly, it's a damn metaphor.
Does it not occur to you that I might know something about watching my friend die over and over again?
I will watch all of you die, one by one. Everyone I love. Because someone decided I should. I'm a machine now.
There's of course the reference to 2 episodes ago, the flat-out reference to Max Headroom as well. I mean, we did know it watching that other episode, but then watching this one, he just said it out loud. But Daisy, though, she does bring up how much they match up on an emotional level. It saddens him that he watches them die over and over again, and it saddens her that she's watched him die over and over again. Reference to the end of Season 5. Then there was Sarge on Season 6, who we always need to remember did have a little bit of Coulson to him. Then there was the first Chronic Coulson at the beginning of the season that died when he sacrificed himself in order to destroy the Chronicon ship. And now we've got the foreshadowing for the end of this other Coulson, this other Chronic Coulson. Now, I did love how this episode did utilize Sousa to the best, like did develop on his character story, on the whole thing with him and with Daisy as well. Let's get started with the first one here. You gotta love how he compares this insanity with the SSR days. I mean, love the SSR, but the insanity here, it's in a whole new level, and especially for a guy who's never in his life watched one of those sci-fi movies that all these other guys probably watched that depicts the stuff that they're going through right now, like time loops and whatnot. There's also all the talk about her type, knowing her type, people like her. He's talking mostly about Agent Carter there. He's seeing Peggy Carter in her. And it is funny because in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Peggy Carter ends up becoming the first director of S.H.I.E.L.D. And at some point on the pages of the comics, Daisy does as well. But let's not forget, there are other levels on which she is kind of similar to Agent Carter, and that Sousa does make clear on this episode. But we also get the bit that tells us he's taking a liking to her. All that talk about her, specifics about Daisy Johnson. She's been taking a liking to him too, and that's evident by the kiss on a ladder loop. Definitely not as fun, not as romantic, when followed by...
That was nice. Now we need to trap Space Robot.
But okay, not sure anyone got these vibes, but I got some Lost vibes with the soundtrack playing during his conversation with Daisy. When he was describing her, when he was talking specifics about her, there was this little bit of soundtrack that just gave me Lost vibes. And I've got these vibes previously on this season. When Coulson get hit with the EMP signal, there was the soundtrack bit, the zooming in on the eyes, the whole zooming in thing at that moment. That felt very John Locke in the coffin at the end of, I think, Season 4 of Lost. But alright, I don't want to prolong this, so I'm gonna say there were so many good one-liners when it came to fighting Enoch. The conversation about the irony and Dead Deke, these were my two favorites actually.
He did not see the irony.
No, he did not.
In retrospect, I should have known I'd make countermanding that order password dependent.
I think it's time we get everyone in on the act.
Deke's dead?
Very.
Do we need to be sad about that?
We do not.
But since we're speaking about Enoch, that gets us to the ending of the episode. Now, Enoch could keep fighting them to protect Fitz's secret, but he still cares, willing to sacrifice himself to save them all. I cannot believe that out of all possible deaths of various characters on this series, I would have ended up getting this emotional over none other than Enoch. I'd say it was all about that speech that he gave in the end. It's not until I met this particular team of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents that being alone meant feeling lonely. There was his apology as well to Coulson, referring to him as Philip J. Coulson, takes us back to the end of Season 4, the beginning of Season 5, and the first time Enoch ever met them at that diner, when he pulled them out of there and sent them to the future. But there's also the talk about the team not surviving this, as in the team being together, tells Daisy to cherish this mission. It will be their last mission together. It will be our last season with them. That's what he's saying over there. Get ready, guys. You're gonna say goodbye to the series. That's yet another emotional moment for all of us, brought about by Enoch. We love this series, we're gonna miss it, it's ending after this season, but it's also an emotional moment for Daisy. She loves the rest of the team, they're her family, something that has been mentioned before on so many seasons, something that was the objective of Coulson at the beginning of the series, making this into her family. But alright, as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, one of my favorites, one of the best on this series so far, a very emotional episode, and succeeding to make us this emotional over Enoch, that's such a great thing. However though, to talk about the title of the episode, which I usually do at the beginning of the video, but right now I need to do it after talking about Enoch, the title was mostly about Enoch. I mean, given the events of the episode, there are other things that it lightly refers to, like Daisy arguing with Coulson, you're not just a machine, when he says that he is one, when she tries to tell him, you still got a soul. I think it makes it partially about him, like you are as you've always been. That's what she's trying to tell him. But as I have always been, that's a title, that's a quote out of Enoch that we heard on a previous episode. And the thing about this quote is Enoch is as he's always been. He's always been a Chronicom, he's always seen the future, but he's not really as he's always been. He's changed. The moment that he met this team, he's changed. The very moment that he got to know them, like know them, this kind of changed. He became a person who's got feelings. He became a person who understood the meaning of being lonely. He never felt that when he was alone before he met them, but after he did, he came to realize the meaning of loneliness. There are emotions there. Enoch is not really as he's always been. But okay though, let's talk the Stinger real quick here. Nathaniel Malick is back in the Stinger of the episode, training the hell out of Daisy's sister, whom we are 100% certain now is Daisy's sister. That's confirmed, made clear, made obvious by the words of Nathaniel at the end of the episode. It's even gonna be confirmed a little bit more based on the trailer of next week's episode, because Jiaying is coming back and she's gonna be referring to Korra as her daughter. Now, on an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. scale where 10 is basically my favorite episodes, like 3 of my favorite episodes of the entire series, I'd give this episode a 9.5 out of 10. When it comes to Daisy-heavy, Daisy-centric episodes, I'd give this episode a 10 out of 10. This is my favorite for Daisy so far. When it comes to Coulson-centric episode, this would be a 9.5, would be sort of the second on my list. When it comes to Daisy and Coulson, you know, a duo-centric episode, that father-daughter relationship, I'd give it a 9.5 out of 10, making it the second on my list. But with that said though, my work here is done, so let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this episode. Let me know what you think is happening with Fitz. When do you expect we're gonna see him? What do you think Jemma remembered there? Is it possibly the end and death of Fitz? Let me know as well if you did like this video by dropping it one of those much appreciated likes, subscribing to this channel, and make sure while you're at it to enable notifications in order to get updates whenever I upload a new video, publish a new community post, or start a new live stream. But until the next time that you tune in for another one of my videos, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or otherwise, thank you so much for tuning into this one, stay safe, and have a great day.